So welcome. How's the sound? We're good on YouTube, yeah? Okay. I'm a little breathy, maybe. I don't know if that's a liability, but um, so welcome. How many people here for the first time? Okay, great. Welcome to you all. So for the format, I will. Yeah, I'll say just a word, and I'll guide us it for a half hour. Then we'll take a few minute break, and then we'll have a offer some reflections if we have time, some dialogue. Um, so I don't remember. I don't know why I did this, but I think maybe there was some ingredient in the marinade I didn't like, but I just like took all the olives, dumped them out, drained them of the whole marinade, put them back into water, and kind of forgot about it, and then tried the olive. And it was so bad. Like, so bad. Like, what happened? What's the Dharma lesson? Anyone? Good. Could be acceptance. Yeah. What we marinate in, you know, right? It matters. And it actually needs to be continual. We need to continually be reminded. And so, um, I don't know, now it's like maybe 10 years ago, I was teaching with Gene, co-teaching with Gene on Folsom. And we were taking questions, and this yogi says, asked Gene, says, I come here to the group and it's so easy to sit and practice, and the Dharma and the whole body of teachings feels so close at hand, and and then I go home and I can never sit at home. And I've been trying. It's like it repeats. I come here, it's deeply meaningful. I go home, I can't sit. How do I sit, And I thought Gene was going to say, like, give a bunch of tips on how to establish a kind of daily routine and how to structure it. And he was going to talk about like texting buddies and setting a time and putting in your calendar. I thought he was going to do all that, right? And he didn't do any of that. He just said, let's just like take a moment to appreciate how potent Sangha is for you, Yeah. So let's sit. Maybe beginning with some fuller breaths. Just seeing how far your breathing can reach into your legs, up into your shoulders. Just kind of the breathing unifying your body. And seeing if there's anything hanging kind of in the peripheral vision, anything that kind of needs to be brought in, needs to be met, needs to be blessed with awareness in order for you to actually arrive here. We just begin to slowly move out of the kind of framework where the moment is a problem to be solved, to the experience of just being softened by the totality of life, moment by moment. We're freed up of the stress of sorting every thought and feeling and sound and sensation, sorting all of that into right and wrong, belongs and doesn't. Cultivate the trust to consent to this moment as medicine. Sometimes to open to the truth of the moment, actually have to soothe ourselves before that feels possible. We experiment with our own ways of soothing tension or agitation. Sometimes we breathe in a certain way. Sometimes we feel the goodness of the community, the Sangha. We're marinating actually in something good. Sometimes we remember some teaching that brings in some ease, soothes our weary hearts. Sometimes the only thing that soothes us is love. the effect of that self-soothing, that there's more space. We become less intimidated by our own pain, by pain itself. Every alarm bell that goes off in our feeling system, re-announcement of urgency, just kind of we bless with awareness, patience. We practice treating all phenomena as false alarms. It's supportive to anchor your attention to your breathing, your body, or sound, this soundscape, sound and silence. Great. And sometimes we just sit here being awake isn't technique. In a few minutes, I'll ring the bell to signify the end of the meditation. But the invitation is to sit as if the bell has already rung. The bell is ringing every moment. Deeply, we might relax, let go, cease pretending about anything. So, yeah, thank you for your practice. Really, I'm very feel privileged to be with you all. So we'll take the traditional 5 minutes or so to say hello to some people or use the bathroom, and I'll ring the bell in 5. We'll come back. Okay. So, yeah, feel free to come up if you have any questions. All right, people. So emotional topic of emotional pain. I kind of figured like that pretty much nails it. Can't go wrong with that one. You know, um, so what matters to us is feeling, and what makes anything matter is feeling. And when we're talking about a good life, we're largely talking about feeling, how we feel. And what is important in our life is usually signified by a lot of feeling, a lot of urgency. And any experience really gains its meaning because we feel. When we think about our life and what we want, we're largely thinking about feeling. When we hope for something, we're largely hoping to feel a certain way. And when we fear something, we're typically afraid of enduring particular feelings. And even how we think about our life is kind of uh, our autobiography is knit together by chapters of emotion, of feeling. And if an experience doesn't have a lot of feeling, it vanishes. It doesn't even become a memory. And when we think about the love and service that's at the heart of the Buddhist path, we're thinking largely about the kind of good feelings that we want our life to create for others, that we want our life to be a kind of quiet blessing. And when we witness the kind of moral vandalism of this moment and all the forces aiding and abetting harm, it is feeling, deep feeling, that alerts us to the fact that matters. And clinging, which is, kind of like at the heart of the Buddhist path, is kind of like clinging is an emotional, bodily, feeling, affective experience. Same as letting go. The highest happiness, the Buddha says, is peace, which is, you could say, the complete resolution of feeling. The complete resolution of feeling. And so in one of the suttas, the Buddha says, all dhammas, which meaning all phenomena, all phenomena converge on feeling. And we can think about this like in terms of two axes: the pleasantness, ranging from incredibly unpleasant to very deeply pleasant, and then the intensity axis, right? So it's like the valence, the charge, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, and arousal level, the intensity of it. This is Lisa Feldman Barrett, brain's emotion, brain researcher. She says interoception, the kind of attention directed inwards, interoception is usually experienced as the properties of valence and arousal, suggesting all psychological events exist in affective feeling space. Valence and arousal might be better thought of as properties of consciousness rather than properties of emotional episodes per se. Valence and arousal. Our life is unfolding in this affective space. Our suffering and hope and fear and freedom is unfolding right there. So we have to learn to skillfully work with feeling, with emotion, because emotions, in a sense, they really weren't like engineered for freedom, right? But for security. Like they weren't like, how do we make Matthew most free? Cooking up the design like of my nervous system. It's like, no, how can we make him like basically an anxious monkey, like that, like startles, like, and so, yes. So in a way, it's like, oh yeah, our feelings don't totally care about our happiness. Their priority is something like security. And so, so we have to actually work with this, explore. When we suffer, emotionally and look for relief, we look to feel better. But maybe the first thing to say here is like the choice is not between feeling bad and feeling good. That's kind of what the mind thinks. It's like, I feel bad, I want to feel good. How do I feel good? But the choice is like, it's often much more like feeling bad in a looping, cyclical kind of way, or feeling bad in a useful way. Those are the choices. I know you want option C, just like none of the above, but it's like, no. Often the kind of, the option, the menu is constrained. It's like the choice is we're going to feel bad. The question is, are we going to suffer efficiently, or not? Right? Which is, we did not put that on the flyer, like, but that I can make that joke like 10 times every fucking Dharma talk, It's like, yeah, it's not but it's like, yeah, with it's the choice is like, okay, are we going to leverage this for our freedom, even though it will not feel good? And so, so in a way, the kind of that efficient mode of bad feeling, the efficient suffering. For me, not everybody, but for me, many people experience that as a kind of grieving. That's the way it feels in the trenches of our own heart when we're suffering in a way that's useful. And as the pain kind of works its way through our system, it feels like something's being taken from us, even though nothing exactly is, we haven't lost anything. And a part of working skillfully with our feeling life is consenting to the poignant grief as the heart lets go. So our emotions are, they're trying to tell us something really important, but the wisdom is bound up with delusion. The wisdom is bound up with delusion. If we take all of our emotion all the time entirely seriously, That we know it doesn't work, right? But on the other hand, if we don't heed the call of the wisdom in the feeling, the intelligence in the feeling, we will never be able to put down our delusion. It's like a siren call. It keeps wanting us, and unless we've heard the kernel of wisdom, we can't put down the delusion. But to actually untangle the intelligence of our emotions from our delusion, we need to come into some balance. We need to listen to our body, and to be mindful of feeling is to feel. It's like seems too simple, almost even say, but to be mindful of feeling is to feel. And yet we know, because emotion is trying to like mobilize our energy for something, trying to like create some movement, some action tendency, get us to do something, get something adjusted in our world. It tends not to be nuanced, right? It's like, you could say that our moods function as devices of confirmation bias. We see what we're in. We see what we're in. And sometimes we don't know how much we're in it. And so balancing our energy, like beginning to untangle the wisdom from the delusion, means we usually, not always, but usually have to come into some measure of tranquility. And the Buddha said, like, truth is only accessible from certain states of mind. That makes sense? It's like we cannot just decide to know the truth. We actually, in a sense, you could say truth depends on our body. Truth depends on us putting our body in a state that is conducive to understanding. And in the kind of super numbed out, flattened thing, or the super hyped up, hyper aroused kind of states, we, I think you can say it's like that's not conducive to accurate seeing. And so we actually have to train our body into the bright tranquility of this path in order to perceive more clearly. When we're energetically overwhelmed, that kind of overwhelm just spills and sprays out, usually as grasping and aversion. And so samsara, this realm of human experience, is sometimes likened to a flood, like we're being touched by the earth, by phenomena all the time. The mind's being stimulated, if we're sighted, our visual field, hearing, all, it's just being touched moment by moment. And our brain gates a lot of that, like it would be completely overwhelming if the kind of magic of our brain didn't impose some order and gate a lot of that. But the truth is the gates constructed by our brain are still inadequate. Too much, you're right? Too much gets through. Too much gets through. Life, even when things are going okay enough, is a little overwhelming. It's just, we're never too far from being overstimulated. And so for this reason, because life feels like too much, we cultivate tranquility. And everything looks different from the vantage point of tranquility. And, sometimes it feels like so far away, but sometimes it's like just literally like 3 deep mindful breaths and something shifts. And we don't always notice how much, but it may be very close by. It's just like just a little bit of ease. And all of a sudden, like in a sense, nothing's changed, but a lot has changed. And from that kind of vantage point of that kind of that ease, we can more clearly discern the wisdom and the delusion in our response. And we can more clearly see, yeah, something like the innocence of the need announced by our emotion, the innocence of it, of course. The philosopher Martha Nussbaum, she said, like, our emotional life maps our incompleteness. A creature without any needs would never have reasons for fear or grief or hope or anger. But for that very reason, we're often ashamed of our emotions and of the relations of need and dependency bound up with them. We come to actually perceive, like, of course, and a felt sense of the kind of innocence of our feeling life. It no longer is a kind of commentary on who we are. Of course, this is arising. Given the totality of causes and conditions, given my history, given our species history, given it all, of course, yeah. Our emotional life maps our incompleteness, meaning that there is need and dependency. That does not need to be a cause for shame. And so we, as I was alluding to in the sit, we it's like we actually cultivate the skill of self-soothing. And was teaching a retreat last week, and it sort of struck me like, oh yeah, maybe like the whole of the Buddhist path is actually just a kind of elaborate, multifaceted way of soothing this pain, this tension, this clinging. We get better at that. Over time, it's just one, because we've taken so many breaths and been awake, just one breath actually calls us back to the fullness of the Dharma. From that sense of more soothing and tranquility, we can actually investigate and untangle. A seeker, approaches the Buddha, says, a tangle within, a tangle without. People are entangled in a tangle. I ask you this: who can untangle this tangle? We know the experience of feeling all tangled up, but we can actually begin from that place of some ease, and it doesn't have to be deep kind of stillness or something, but just some modicum of tranquility. We can begin to see how our suffering is an amalgamation of different experiences. It's a tangle of different sensory experiences. And when something feels unbearable, what's actually happening is there are a bunch of different experiences, and the attention is pinging quickly off all of them like a pinball machine. And at some point, the pinball goes fast enough and is pinging off of memory and feeling and prediction, simulated futures and bad body sensations and bleak narratives and all that, and it pings and pings and pings, and at some point we just collapse, and our life in that moment feels unbearable. Dharma practice helps us track the different threads of experience before we collapse in. And so there's awareness of, okay, there's the emotional circuits of my body, high arousal, low high unpleasantness. Okay, there's stories running through my mind, words that I can actually begin to hear. There's images. I'm having memories. Maybe there's flashback. Maybe I'm kind of like really thoughts become the realest thing in the world in those moments. And we lose track that actually our suffering is that tangle. And all of them are unpleasant. I'm not saying we pretend like they're pleasant, but we actually untangle threads. And we see how each thread, when it tangles, amplifies each other. This is the deconstructive aspect of Buddhist practice. As a meditator, working with painful feeling, really, it seems like it's always got to be an inside job. It's sort of like we pay, the practice is inwards, and that's true much of the time. But sometimes we actually cannot move through painful emotion without acting. That it's actually necessary, and sometimes we're staying with the kind of quiet, solitary, meditative practice because we're afraid to do what actually has to happen and what might move us through the emotional intensity. So sometimes we will not be able to let go of grief until we have at least given ourselves a chance to love again, to entrust our heart to someone or something. And sometimes we cannot let go of anger until we've said our deepest, clearest, most potent no. And sometimes we can't let go of fear until we've exposed ourselves to the risk and been okay, or we can't let go of shame until we've fully exposed ourselves, like really exposed ourselves, been seen through, and still be loved. The shame will not release until that. And much of this requires spiritual friendship, Sangha, where we started, like our mind, our mind can become, there are times when it's just an absolute wasp nest, and kind of every Dharma move we make, every kind of like, we say we're not trying to control it, but every Dharma move we make is like this little Dharma karate move on it. And it just like, you're fucking with the nest, like everything we're doing basically is a recapitulation of the pain. And every move we make is a kind of just stirs it. And, our attention and thinking and decision making in those modes are just all colonized by pain. Zen tradition says the Dharma is transmitted from warm hand to warm hand. And we learn from other people, and from their heart and their view and their stability, just as they learned from someone else. It's been passed on, right? Sometimes we give our stability, sometimes we need to receive the stability, the love of others, spiritual friendship. And there are certain feelings, there are certain things like feel interpersonal emotions that essentially require an audience, even if that audience is internal, like shame, that just like we can do a lot of intrapersonal, solitary practice. We can practice gazing at ourselves with the eyes of kindness, but but sometimes you simply like actually need to be seen in your kind of desperation and poverty and vulnerability by another person who m- maintains their care and love. And that's actually how the feeling is discharged. And so sometimes we do the practice on our own, and sometimes it's like, no, actually, I need another person who is unintimidated by my pain and my story and all of it. And they can kind of like nod empathically, but you know that they are not convinced by your whatever. Yeah. Sometimes we regulate emotion by just we actually have to redirect our attention, and when the awareness just keeps collapsing into the feeling, we keep kind of drowning in it. Like it's skillful, we just need to put our attention somewhere. We need to disrupt the kind of stickiness of the episode and the emotional pain, such that we just have to like almost give our body time to re-regulate, So we redirect the attention, and that can be lots of different ways. And it's like when the choice is between drowning and avoidance, Buddhists think like, well, I should probably drown, in it. It's like, no, 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 no. It's skillful redirecting. And maybe that is like 6 hours of Netflix or whatever, but it's like, all right, this is like, there's nothing productive coming from this mind state. The whole attentional stream needs to be disrupted. Part of how we work with painful feeling is changing the view. A lot of Buddhist practice, a lot of what the Buddha offered, kind of anticipated cognitive therapy, which looks at kind of maladaptive thoughts and how that cascades into bad feeling. And this is from the book Orbital, Samantha Harvey, who's the story told from the perspective of astronauts. She writes, the earth from here is like heaven. It flows with color, a burst of hopeful color. When we're on the planet, we look up and think heaven is elsewhere. But here is what the astronauts and cosmonauts sometimes think. Maybe all of us born to it have already died and are in an afterlife. If we must go to an improbable, hard to believe in place when we die, that glassy, distant orb with its beautiful, lonely light could well be it. Saw that and it's like, okay, that's a shift. That's a deep cognitive shift. One of the suttas, the Buddha gives a few practical things. Okay, we might, in the throes of bad feeling, feeling badly, we might replace one thought with another as kind of cognitive reappraisal, where we reinterpret experience in light of the Dharma. Or the Buddha says we contemplate the consequences of the unwholesome state. Or we redirect the attention from the unwholesome to the wholesome. Or the fourth thing he says is we examine the origins of the thought, that the mind is conditioned. It didn't come out of nowhere. We actually trace that back, And then lastly, he like said, like if it's really desperate times, if you're gonna do something that really harms yourself or another, um, the kind of final resort is crush mind with mind. You know, that was that's the translation. Clench your teeth, press your tongue against the roof of your mouth, and crush mind with mind. Yeah, that's not option A, but like if you're sober and going to drink, okay, you know, if you're going to do whatever it may be when it's major stakes, okay. The pain, the kind of pain can be medicine, you know. That pain can be medicine. This is almost unbelievable for some part of our mind, you know. And but it's true. We actually can practice such that pain softens our heart, and we sort of make a vow to be softened by it. I read this story some years ago about this mathematician who had this kind of major impact on the field and then kind of vanished. And I think this is from like a journal that was found after he died or something. And he had written, I know that there is a nourishing substance in everything that happens to me, whether the seeds are sown by my own hand or by others. It is up to me to eat it and watch it transform into knowledge. I've learned that in the harvest, however bitter, there is substantial flesh which it is up to us to nourish ourselves with. When this substance is eaten and has become part of our flesh, the bitterness, which was only the sign of our resistance to the food intended for us, has disappeared. So we actually practice treating the moment, you know, as neither our fault nor an accident. And you could say that emotional pain has the taste of suffering or the taste of purification. It's going to be one of those. The taste of suffering compounding on itself and making our heart more brittle, or the taste of purification, which is something like the hard edges of our being are being sanded down. You actually can feel it. And it's a kind of goodness that emerges from feeling bad in exactly the right way. Shinzen Yang. The taste of purification is very hard to describe, but in essence, it's a kind of joy. You might be in great pain, but there's a deep joy because you feel blockages being worked out each time you greet the pain with equanimity. You feel how the energy in the pain is wearing away the separation between you and your spiritual source. You sense that holdings from the past are being ground up, digested, metabolized by the peristaltic and vibratory movements of impermanence. The grinding and digesting is both painful and liberating at the same time. This is the taste of purification. So we keep noticing that our bracing quarantines the pain but amplifies the suffering. And at some point, it's like, and we do this from a place of tranquility, but it's like, here I am, come what may. And in the trenches of purification, often this too, I would say, feels like grieving. And And the grief hurts, but the love really never feels far. And I know for me, like all the years of retreats, like I never would have stayed unless I could feel as I did the sense that moment by moment, as I kind of met physical and emotional pain as best I could, moment by moment, hatred was becoming less tenable, just less tenable. You do not get up from a sit where it's like intense, maybe even agony, and just trying to meet that experience with peace. You do not get up from that and feel the heart becomes deeply nonviolent, and you don't know what's being digested or something, but there's this sense of like, okay, consciousness is being purified, becoming lighter, more spacious, less prone to the whiplash of greed and hatred. And the kind of love left in the wake of that is, it's a very quiet but very natural love. Leonard Cohen says, I greet you from the other side of sorrow and despair with a love so vast and shattered it will reach you everywhere. So I tried to offer a bunch of things you can do, you know, around emotional pain. But maybe a last note is in order, which is something like not every pain is meant to be consoled. You know, there's some pain I don't want to kind of like boil down or meditate away, or it's more like we stand under it, we bear it, we live alongside it. And sometimes some dukkha simply must be known. That's it. I don't want to transform it at all. This suffering, it's just meant to be known. It's not meant to be regulated. It's not meant to get better. We just bow to that pain. And those moments, in a sense, I feel like we are refining our relationship with helplessness. Love in the face of helplessness. Not changing, not tinkering, not boiling it down. Sometimes dukkha and helplessness, dukkha usually rendered as suffering, like, okay, maybe we could talk about it as helplessness. And we're just there. We're just there in the kind of intensity of being alive. But in those moments, in order to not make it worse, we can't try to make it better. We're just awake, deeply awake. And there's certain pains, global dukkha, sometimes where I feel like, my love is so much bigger than my power. All I can do sometimes is just bow. Let's just sit for a moment together. So whatever is alive in your heart in this moment, the crew online, the people here, just meeting that tenderly. And committing, may my life be a cause and condition for uh, less suffering. My life, and all those lives I touch. May my practice, meditators, Dharma practitioner, may my life leave a kind of trail of good feeling. And that kind of trail and legacy, just even in very small ways, that is, I believe, our consolation for mortality and finitude. So yeah, thank you for your attention. I just, some teachers, they're like very disciplined. They like make a point and then tell a story, make a point, give you time to digest. I just kind of vomited up everything I know about feeling bad. So, find your way with it. And yeah, the Sangha is supported by donations. So if you wish to support Big Heart City, some support me, that's gratefully received. And yeah, really feels good to be with you all. And I'll hang around for a bit if you have any questions, want to chat. Okay, thank you all.